Hi everybody, this is Brett Lonsdale and thank you very much for joining our DeliverPoint webinar this afternoon, at least this afternoon in the UK, maybe morning where you are. And just in case you want a weather forecast here, it is torrential rain and wind at the moment, which is not unusual for here. Yeah, first of all, we're going to just do a quick intro as to who Lightning Tools is and also to myself, and then we're going to jump straight into lots of hands-on demonstrations using DeliverPoint inside of Microsoft SharePoint and also Microsoft Teams. And we'll also take a look at what's new in the 3.3 release that we've just released this month as well. So if you're just joining, welcome. So as I mentioned, my name is Brett Lonsdale. Lightning Tools is a company that basically provides tools for Microsoft SharePoint and also Microsoft Teams, and we'll have a quick look at what those tools are in just a moment. But you can obviously head out to our website, which is lightningtools.com, if you want to browse some of those. And we've also got our sister company as well mentioned on here, which is enlightningtech.com. And one of the things that Enlightning does is basically provides Power Platform and Microsoft SharePoint coaching as well. So you can always reach out to enlightningtech.com if you are after some coaching in order to sort of build a solution in Power Apps or Power BI, Microsoft SharePoint, or even Teams or something along those lines. And to introduce Lightning Tools to you, so Lightning Tools is a company, we're in our 15th year of providing different tools and web parts for Microsoft SharePoint. And of course, this has evolved through all of the different on-premises versions of SharePoint to what we have now in SharePoint Online, and also the other sort of Microsoft 365 tools such as Teams and OneDrive and things like that. So we have a series of different products. Obviously, the permissions management is the piece that we're going to be taking a look at today. So how you can, as a business user or also as a Microsoft SharePoint tenant or Microsoft 365 tenant administrator or a SharePoint administrator, manage permissions more effectively and also report on permissions as well across your environment. And we also have a number of other products as well that you can check out on our website, lightningtools.com, which include things like content aggregation, discussion board tools. We also have data integration and visualization, as well as a SharePoint modern list form design tool and SharePoint list actions, which is a brand new tool that got announced last month as well. So that sort of completes our tool set for Microsoft 365 at least. And like I said, what we're going to be taking a look at in this webinar is, first of all, how to sort of report and manage permissions as though you are a business user. So really what we're going to start looking at, first of all, is just, if you are managing permissions in a decentralized environment. So if you are maybe a head of sales, head of human resources, or head of operations, whatever, you may have a series of different SharePoint sites and Microsoft Teams that you are the owner of, or you have full control to, and therefore it kind of becomes your responsibility to make sure that the right people have access to those sites and also to the content within those sites, such as document libraries and SharePoint lists, and also folders and files and so on. So we're going to be talking about that initially, and then we're going to jump into the demonstration of using DeliverPoint centrally. So of course, you don't have to use one or the other. You can empower users to be able to report and manage permissions more effectively using DeliverPoint, but also as a tenant administrator or SharePoint administrator, you can centrally sort of govern those permissions and make sure that the right people have permissions across multiple different hubs and site collections, but also making sure that retired users and things like that are fully removed from your environment. So from a business user perspective, there's a number of different challenges that we face as a business user. Of course, you're not necessarily an IT person, you may be, but typically you've created a site, or a site has been created for you, and you've got a team of people creating content inside that site. And of course, one of the default permissions that you get is member, which means that you can actually go through and by default, again, because all of this can be tied down, by default, you can share content with other people, and you may be sharing content with other tenant users, such as yourself, so colleagues of yours that are inside your Active Directory, but it's also possible to share content outside of your environment as well, if your company allows that. So you could be sharing content perhaps with customers or with suppliers, vendors, or anybody else for that matter. So that's the sort of thing that we want to show you how we can report on more effectively, so you can start to take responsibility for that content easily without it sort of interfering too much with your typical day job. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that we'll be taking a look at. So first of all, yeah, who has access to your content and the sites that you manage? We'll be taking a look at that. Also, if somebody leaves your department or even your organization, how you make sure that those permissions are removed. Typically, there's no vulnerability there as far as security is concerned, because that user typically would be disabled inside the Active Directory, or they'd have their SharePoint license removed from them and they wouldn't be able to authenticate. But you're guaranteed to get questions as to, why is this person showing up as being a member of groups, and why is this person showing up as having access to my files when he left the organization a couple of years ago or something like that. So it's those sorts of permissions that we want to make sure are cleaned up, and also that you can onboard or offboard people from your sites with ease. And that's the sort of thing that we can use DeliverPoint for. So we'll see also who's shared what. So this is using sharing links. So there's nothing more tedious than going through one folder at a time or one file at a time inside the different document libraries and trying to see, is there a sharing link on this file or folder? So with DeliverPoint, we'll see how we can actually do that using one report and one click to see all of the sharing links within inside our site or even subsites for that matter. And also where permission inheritance has been broken as well. It's one of the things that is very challenging to sort of keep on top of as people do share files and folders. That causes permission inheritance to be broken, and that can make for a headache for us. So one of the things we want to do is make sure that we govern that properly inside our site. So these people, they don't just have their day jobs, but we're adding to that with this responsibility of getting a little bit of IT involvement and making sure that the right people have access to their content. So let's jump into our first demo, where we're going to take a look at how to report and manage permissions contextually with inside sites and also with inside of Microsoft Teams as well. So I'm just going to Alt Tab here into SharePoint. Okay, and here we are in SharePoint. So what we've got is a sort of typical kind of environment where we've got a communication site as the landing page, and in there we've got our mega menu taking us to different sites, which may be different hubs, like our sales hub here or marketing hub, or even into research and development and so on. And under the sales hub, you can see we've got lots of different sites and so on. And one of the challenges is, as an IT person, is we don't necessarily know sales inside our organization. We don't know who should have access to the different files and folders that have been shared with customers, for example. That's something that the sales team is going to know better than IT. So it makes sense that the sales hub owner, for example, may have that responsibility and need the tools to be able to report and manage on those permissions more effectively. So I'm landing on this site actually as a tenant administrator, and so therefore, I've got full control to everything. I can use DeliverPoint throughout. But one of the things that we can do also with DeliverPoint is access that same site as a end user, and that end user being the site owner or somebody with full control to that site. And what you'll notice here is I've just switched accounts to demo user 5 in this case. And that user can, of course, through their permissions, access things like the site settings and things like that through SharePoint. So if I was to actually go through the standard SharePoint out of the box site permissions, they can jump all the way through to the advanced permissions and that type of thing. But if we were to take a look at another example of a user, this user here is demo user 6, and demo user 6 does not have full control. They're just a regular user. So they see less things under this cog icon. And if they were to go to the site settings, it's very limited as to what they can actually do inside the site. And the same thing occurs with DeliverPoint as well. So one of the things you'll notice as demo user 6 is that there is no cog just beneath the icon giving you access to some of the different DeliverPoint menu options that there are with demo user 5. So here as demo user 5, we've actually got some DeliverPoint reports showing up, not just here inside the site, but also throughout the site as well, with inside the different lists and libraries and that type of thing. So you'll see DeliverPoint on the command bar of the different lists and libraries, and also against different files and folders that user is the owner of. So let's take a look at what some of those reports allow us to do. So here, as the business user that has full control to the site, what we're going to do is have a look at who's got permissions to the site. And if we were to use SharePoint out of the box, in fact, let's just navigate back to the home page for a moment here. So if I was to use SharePoint out of the box as this demo user, then what you'll notice once it comes up is we've got this link in the top right hand corner. It says there's 4 members. Now, this is not by any means the only 4 people that have access to this site, but it could be construed that way. What we have is lots of other people that are permissioned through Microsoft 365 groups, also through Active Directory security groups. There's direct permissions. There's also sharing links and so on as well to be concerned with. And even if we were to use the SharePoint permissions option with SharePoint, we're going to start to see that. So as we expand site owners, site members, and site visitors, we can see that there's actually more people that are permissioned throughout. Okay, I just got a note that the audio is breaking up. I hope that's not affecting everybody. But yeah, please keep telling me if that continues to occur. Okay, so so here inside the site, what we have is the site owners, the site members, and site visitors. And under the members, when it's a Microsoft 365 group, you do see those members, and this is where the 4 members were coming from. But what we've also got is some Active Directory security groups such as sales here, and you can see that that is not enumerated. And this is one of the challenges, in fact, for a site owner, is they can't see who's inside these Active Directory security groups. They don't know if it's the right people in there, and so on. So that's sort of putting the challenge out there. What we can do with DeliverPoint is just simply within the single click generate a report and see everybody that is permissioned within our site. So as we execute that, you'll see that there's some users here with read permissions. There's also some users here with edit permissions. There's users with full control and so on. And one of the things we can do is start to sort and filter this report to chop and change it as we like. But this is basically everybody that is going to be permissioned on the site. So one thing I might want to do is filter it to just see who's got edit permissions or who's got full control, or even turn that into a not equal. And let's remove read, because maybe we're not too concerned with who's got read permissions, but we are concerned with higher permissions than read. And in here, you can see that we've got a handful of users that have edit permissions and some also that have full control to the site. Now, the next question may be, well, how do these users actually get those permissions? So what we can see on the right-hand side here, by expanding these groups, is how they actually came about having those permissions. So you can see demo user 5 was actually, it appears like their permissions are duplicated. They have edit permissions, but they also, if I just select those to make it more obvious which ones I'm referring to, you can see that one of them is through the Lightning Tools Sales Members, which is a Microsoft 365 group that was nested into the SharePoint group. And one of them is through the Sales Active Directory Security group, which is also nested inside that SharePoint group. So we can always see exactly how people are permissioned, as well as seeing the users themselves that are permissioned. Now, sometimes actually drawing attention to demo users like this, one of the things that we've added in this release is the ability to see the people card. So as you hover over the avatar for that user, we can see the people card pop up. And one of the things you might see is that you've actually got 2 people with the same name and not necessarily a duplicate user. So one of the things we can do is hover over that person and see who that person is, who they report to, and maybe even engage with them through email or instant messaging if we want to as well. Okay, so that's the type of report that we can execute at the site level. And just to show you that if we were to go into a document library or into a folder, that we can also access a similar reports there as well. So I can discover the permissions on a library or a list and see who's permissioned on it, and also with inside the folders. And one of the challenges, again, with SharePoint out of the box is we can, of course, manage access on any folder and see this new modern side panel appearing, and we can drill into that and see who's got permissions. But one of the things you can't do is actually do that on more than one entry. That manage access option disappears, but you do still have the discover permissions coming through from Lightning Tools DeliverPoint, and in there we can see who's got permissions to those two folders that I selected there. Okay, now we don't always necessarily need to do that. Of course, these folders are going to contain subfolders, and those subfolders may contain even more subfolders or even files. So even using DeliverPoint, it's going to be a little bit time consuming going through and selecting all of those things. So most of the time, we're just really concerned with what has been shared, or also what has broken permission inheritance and who has items to those who has access to those items with broken permission inheritance. So one of the things we can do is see the sharing links at the library level to see what's been shared, or we can also navigate back up to home. So in the case where you may have multiple document libraries like I do here, we could hit the drop down and choose the sharing links option, and this will actually go through and process multiple lists and libraries and tell me what's been shared inside this site. So I can see here that we've got a number of different things that have been shared. So here is perhaps a whole library. We've got a folder. We've got brochures. We've got a commission claim form, and we've also got the sales strategy Excel file. And we can see when they were shared, who they were shared by, and also the type of sharing. So one of the things that you can do when you share is either share with specific people, or if your company allows it, also be able to share with anybody that can get their hands on that link. So they're the different sharing types. We can see the permission that's granted under that scenario, and we can also see who the members are that have had that shared with them as well. So that can be run at the site level. You can also run it at multiple sites and so on. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back in as the tenant admin. So it's just come back here, and just to show you that, again, based on my permissions, I may see some additional things, like the ability to jump into those groups and things like that. But more importantly, what I can also do is, by going into the main DeliverPoint page, we can start to expand the scope from beyond the current site. So you'll notice there is a tree view here that allows me to go in and access all the other different site collections and different hub sites, and also if we want to jump into teams and things like that. But also, if we keep that collapsed for a moment, we've got some additional reports in here that include things like unique objects or discover permissions advanced and things like that. And it's this one that I want to start off with, the discover permissions advanced. Now, the scope is still the current site that I'm within. So what we'll do, so this is the sales site, but I can prefix it with a filter. So rather than running the report and then filtering it, we can actually filter it ahead of time if we know what we're looking for. So if we're looking for a specific permission level or looking for a specific person or group, we can provide that filter value, or we can just leave that by default. Expand the settings, and this is what I like to do here, is just show everything that may be a subsite that has unique permissions, also any lists or libraries that have unique permissions, any items that also have unique permissions, and also any sharing links. And we can also show the item hierarchy now as well, so we can actually see, if files are buried in multiple levels of folders. So I'm going to go through and select those first few things. I'm not too interested in things that inherit permissions. I'm just really concerned with those that have unique permissions. So I'm going to generate the permission report. And as you can see, we've got the permissions coming back. In here are the site permissions. So first of all, we've got the site that I was on, so that was in scope. We can see everybody that's permissioned on that site. But as we paginate through, you can also see that there's a subsite here called regions, and regions actually has broken permission inheritance. Otherwise, it wouldn't be showing up inside this report, since I only included sites with unique permissions. So we can see who's permissioned on the regions site as well. And as we scroll down, we can also see some lists. So we've got the document library, so that has unique permissions. And again, as we go through, we've got some sales battle cards in here. And yeah, I think that was it. So two different libraries with unique permissions, and we can keep on scrolling further, or just collapse that if it's lengthy. And we can see all the items as well. So you can see a folder is clearly indicated now with a little folder icon. And yeah, as we navigate through that, there's other folders and maybe even files as well that have got unique permissions. So one of the improvements is we actually showed that folder hierarchy, as I mentioned now, so we can actually see the folder name and then where the file resides. And just hovering over that icon, you can notice that this is separated into two different hyperlinks. So if you need to visit that folder to try and determine what that file is, or go to the document itself, you can hyperlink onto those two things as two separate links there. Okay, and all of these reports that we're producing, they can, every single one of them that I've shown you and all the ones that you're going to see, they can all be exported out to Excel as well. So if you need to take a snapshot at any time, one benefit of doing that is to actually compare permissions with how they are now with maybe in a couple of months time to see how things have changed. So with that snapshot, you can perform that. And we're also going to jump more into the permissions management side shortly. But I just want to show you that as long as you have the permissions to do so, you can actually also come in and manage the permissions. So if I had something selected in here, we can go to the account management section, and this allows me to copy, transfer, delete, grant, or revoke permissions. And these are all really beneficial for making your life easier when you're managing permissions. So we can change from onboarding a person means let's go through granularly on all the different files and folders and add somebody that needs permissions to it, to actually saying, well, why don't we just copy the permissions from somebody that's already doing that job. So we can copy the permissions from demo user 9 in this case to another user that is being onboarded inside this department. So we can go through and select a different user account, and we can select what it is we want to affect. So whether we want to affect the membership of Microsoft 365 groups or just direct permissions, and do we want to roll that back at any point as well. And rolling it back is really useful if this is obviously going to be a temporary change. So if somebody's furloughed or something like that, you need to reverse this at some time in the future. Anyway, we'll dive more into that very, very shortly. Okay, so that's using SharePoint, and we'll come back to the centralized permissions management in a moment, but everything we saw here was contextual with inside a site. I just want to show you in Teams as well. So we've got some nice new team changes going on this month. One of the nice things that I like is the fact that you can see the site with inside a teamified SharePoint site now. So of course, from there, you can access the DeliverPoint options because they're in the site after all. But what you can also do is go through and add DeliverPoint as a tab. So if you do have some permission challenges across not just a single channel, but also some private channels or something like that, you can come into here and you can access DeliverPoint, and it will default again to the current site. So when you go through and access the different reports and so on, we can select the site and also discover the permissions and so on from within inside Teams as well. And this supports it's not just accessing the page, this is an app, so you'll see here we docked all the sort of dark modes and things like that if you want to get that sort of context of working into Teams. And that's adding it to a specific team. But what you can also do for centralized permissions management is access DeliverPoint on the left-hand panel as a personal app. And this allows you to come in and use all those sort of centralized permissions features. So what I'm going to do here is actually just look for my technical support site. And as we select that, you can see that we can drill into that tech support team. And that tech support team, we can see all the different lists and libraries and things like that involved in there. And also our private channel, which is here. So we can include that inside our reporting scope. So as I go through and discover the permissions, I can see who's got permissions to that private channel, as well as to the general team. Okay, so that's the type of thing that you can use DeliverPoint for, like I said, contextually as a site owner or somebody with full control. I'll see there's a question in there as well, which is a great one. So what level of permission do you need in the tenant for the administrator role, global admin or SharePoint administrator? So the answer to that is it can be very varied. Basically, we cannot elevate permissions at all using DeliverPoint. So if you have full control to an object, whether that's through being a tenant admin or a SharePoint admin role or being a site owner or explicitly being given full control to an object, you can report on that object using DeliverPoint. So you cannot do anything that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to do, if that answers that question. So as a tenant admin, yeah, you can execute permission reports across the board. Also, as a SharePoint admin, as long as you've got full control to things, you can use that as well to report on those permissions and also manage those permissions. So let's take a look at DeliverPoint from a sort of central permissions management point of view. So that job of managing permissions in a site just got thousands of times bigger. So you've got lots of site owners, lots of site collection administrators, also end users with edit permissions, sharing things, breaking permission inheritance, not necessarily following good practices, and therefore you're getting this permissions mess that you need to really get under control. And that can happen across different sites and site collections, and also hub sites and associated sites. And your job of being able to make sure that the right people have permissions and it's kept tidy is quite a large one, especially using SharePoint natively when you're going through and only able to report on one object at a time. So your alternative is to use PowerShell, but then that in itself is also time consuming as well sometimes. So DeliverPoint makes that a lot easier for you. Again, it's easier to onboard and offboard users. You can make sure that the right people have access to the different sites that they need access to, and you can also report on things like dead accounts and things like that as well, which we're going to be taking a look at right now. So yeah, centralized reporting and managing permissions in SharePoint Teams and also OneDrive. So what we're going to do is just navigate back up to the hub. By the way, just share a little bit of excitement for you. I was excited by this anyway. This is a Lightning Tools communication site, which is a hub site. And one of the things that you can now do under the hub site settings, or not the hub site settings, sorry, site permissions, is go to the hub panel, and you can sync permissions now with the associated sites. So when hub sites and associated sites first came out, they would each have their own access control list, and that was it. There was no such thing as permission inheritance. And there still isn't. This is just something slightly different. You can sync your permissions so that the same people have access to those sites across the hub. So that's a nice new feature that Microsoft has pushed out. So inside this this hub site, we can of course use all the same reports in here. I can go through and discover the permissions, and typically inside a communication site, I've got pretty much everybody. So I'm using everyone except external users as having read permissions through the visitors group. And then I've just got a couple of users with full control there that may be needing to manage the page itself. So we're going to just bring that link up again and go to the main DeliverPoint page. This time we're going to show the tree view out to the left there. And what I want to show you is that I can drill into this site here and see the different lists and libraries that make up that site. But what I could also do, if we were to navigate maybe to the Sales Hub, which is a separate site, it's just using an association, I can jump into DeliverPoint there as well, and that becomes the scope. So when I show the tree view, notice how that one is selected on the tree view, but I can also go through and access these other site collections and so on. So in this site collection, you'll notice here that we've got several different sites. So I've got the parent site, the root site, if you like, called Lightning Tools Sales, and then I've got two subsites, one called Partners and one called Regions. And Partners, I can tell instantly by just looking at the icon there that this site is inheriting permissions. So whenever the icon is dimmed, it inherits. Whenever it's in full color like Regions, it's got unique permissions. And that same thing is reflected through the different lists and libraries. So notice that you've got documents and product battle cards here that have unique permissions. So different things I can do with that is go through and select those two libraries if that was concerning. I can discover the permissions on those two as they both get reported upon in there. And of course, I could be sort of analyzing this and trying to work out what the difference is, or we can just simply come down here to the compare permissions report, and that'll tell me if there's any difference. So in this case, there is no differences. So what I could do is maybe say, well, what's the difference between those two libraries and the site then? So we can compare the permissions at that level, and I can see there's just one single change, and that is that the sales site has a user with limited access. So that is it. So one of the things we could therefore make the decision on is, since there's no difference in the permissions on these two libraries from the parent site really, what we can do is just come up to the actions menu, go down to permissions management and re-inherit permissions. And we just execute that, and that will go through and re-inherit those for me, so that they now inherit from the site itself. So you can start to make sort of sensible decisions based upon that and that compare option. And you can also compare across sites as well. So if we select those three sites, we can pull up the compare permissions at that level, and this points out what's the difference in permissions across those three sites that we had selected. And of course, you could reset that permission inheritance there if you wanted to as well. So that's the compare permissions. There's also a unique objects, which is really useful to run. So with those three sites selected, we can include lists and items and so on, and have a look at the objects that have broken permission inheritance. And if there's any objects that concern us, then again, we can start to drill into them. So for example, I'm not too concerned about sales brochures being shared, but maybe these commission claims, who have they been shared with? So we can go through and select those two commission claim files, and from that reports menu, we can now go through and discover who's got permissions to those particular files. And again, remove anybody if we want to, since they have broken permission inheritance anyway. Okay, so that's the type of report that we can do there, and that's a great way to sort of get started with it using that unique objects report. Now you'll notice that there's a few more reports that become available if you've got the site collection selected as your scope. So in here we've got things like dead account reports, unlicensed users, external users, and so on that we can report on, and not just do it for one site collection, but across many site collections, just simply by going through and selecting those and coming down to something like the dead account report. That will go through and show us who the dead accounts are. So if we've got people that are no longer inside the Active Directory or disabled inside the Active Directory, but they still have permissions inside of SharePoint, they are going to show up as a dead account. And from here, you can go through and select those accounts and simply remove that dead account. And that will be removed for us, which is great. Okay, so that's the type of thing that we can do at that level. And manage things in larger scopes. You've also got the unlicensed users and external users, as I mentioned. Now, there's other ways of looking at the different sites. You can first of all search on them, as you saw earlier. So if it was tech support I was after, I can do a search on that. And you'll notice the different icons, whether it's a teamified site, a classic site collection, or a hub site, and so on. And this drop down here actually allows us to focus in on those. So we can choose the hub site view. And in this case, where we've got the Lightning Tools software hub site, I can expand that and actually see everything that is associated with it. So they may be Microsoft 365 groups that have been associated. They could be Teams, or they could be just SharePoint sites that have all been associated. And where this makes our life easier is if you're not syncing those permissions within your hub, and you need to grant somebody permissions to every single site in the hub. You can do that really easily now. We can go through and just simply select each of these sort of top level objects, and from the actions menu, we can go through and grant permissions. Whether we grant permissions directly or through a group, we've got the option to do either, or also grant permissions to a group if you want to do it that way. So if we just select a user here, here's all the different permission levels, or we can specify a group to make that user a member of. And again, we can support rollback. We can process subsites and any associated sites and things like that as well when we go to perform that, and that will make the changes for me. Okay, and because I selected the support rollback, I've got the rollback option here, but what we can also do is always switch out to that jobs view, and that is going to show us the jobs that we've performed, who those jobs were created by and when they were created. And if we hit the view job details, we can see what options were selected or what the scope was when that job was executed as well. So if ever you need to roll that one back, we can basically go through and select that, roll it back, and it will undo those changes for me and put things back to how they were to begin with. Okay, so that's sort of managing the hub, which becomes a lot easier. And of course, you could do that list or library level as well if you wanted to. Okay, so that's some of those different options under the account management section. You'll also notice there's copy and transfer. So just a quick discussion over the differences between these two. One of the benefits of copying permissions is you can copy permissions from an existing user that already has access, or from a group, to somebody else that is maybe joining a department or joining a team. And to make your life easier for onboarding users and granting permissions, you could also consider creating template accounts, giving the permissions to that template account. For example, we could have somebody called salesperson. They could have all of the permissions that a salesperson would need. So whenever we want to onboard a salesperson, we just select the salesperson and who the new salesperson is going to be, and then we can go through and execute all of the permission changes that are needed for that person to start working. So that's with the copy permissions. We've also got the transfer permissions, and this is useful if somebody's leaving a team or leaving the organization. You can select all the different scopes, and you can basically transfer permissions away from them and give them to somebody that's taking over that role. So you've got the transfer permissions from and the transfer permissions to. And again, that would take care of any Microsoft 365 group memberships and also any SharePoint group memberships and so on. There is also other operations such as straightforward delete permissions or grant permissions and revoke permissions as well. Revoke permissions is really useful for taking away a permission level. So if there's just a single permission level that somebody has, such as design permissions, maybe they shouldn't have design permissions, they should just have edit. So I don't want to remove all of their permissions, I just want to remove the design permission. So we can go through and revoke a single permission from a user using that feature there. Okay, another one that I want to introduce you to is, if we just go up to the current site collection again, is using this unique objects view. So from here, if we bring back every object that has unique permissions, it might be that I've got a site or a library or something like that, and I want to make sure that the same people have the same access to both libraries. For example, this usually occurs when you could have a document or a document library called Financials 2020, and then another document library that you create called Financials 2021. We want the same people to have access to it, but we've just separated it based on years. So what we could do there is select an object that we know the right people have permissions to. So we can go through and check that the right people have permissions to that object. And from the unique objects then, so I went the long way around there. So from that unique objects, we can select that as a source object. And from the actions menu, we can go to permissions management, and we can choose the either the copy item or copy site or copy library, depending on what type of object it is that I've got selected. So literally we can say, yeah, I want to copy the site permissions from that particular site. And we can drill down then into our target site. So as we navigate this, it might be that I want the people that have got permissions to regions, I want the same people to have permissions to partners. So we'll select partners as our target site. And now we can just basically go through and say, yeah, alternatively, processor lists and libraries in here, we can support that rollback. If we're going across site collections doing this, we can copy SharePoint groups and copy permission levels and so on. And basically choose run, and that will go through and copy any permissions. You can see here that it actually skipped. It didn't do it because this one has inherited permissions. So if I tick this box here, I can force break the permissions, and now it will do it. So it will break the permissions first, and then it will copy the permissions across. So they will both now have unique permissions, those sites. So you can do that at different levels as well. Now, another type of report that we can run is focused on a user. And what I'll do here is just do a search on a user called Sandy. Some of you may know her well. So as we select Sandy here, I could run a unique permissions report. in which case it's not really going to show anything for Sandy in this site collection. But if we put in maybe demo user 5 and do the same thing on that user, this will show me everything that that user has been granted permissions to inside the site collection that I selected. So in here we can see item permissions, site permissions, and also what groups that user is a member of. But also what we can do, and this is why I'm going to search on Sandy, is because Sandy's also got OneDrive. So I can go through and have a look at OneDrive sharing links. So these are all the folders or the files that Sandy has shared that she may have forgotten that she'd shared. But running this report will show you, out of potentially thousands of files and folders, what has been shared with whom. And by going through and selecting those, you can actually remove those sharing links, and it will take that sharing link away. So as the tenant admin that has explicitly been given permissions to do this, you can go through and do that on other people's OneDrives. Alternatively, you can use DeliverPoint on your own OneDrive, and only your own OneDrive, in order to be able to make these changes. So they are the sharing links, and also as a separate report, you've got the OneDrive permissions as well that you can run to see any direct permissions that may have been granted inside that OneDrive. And again, you can remove those if you need to do so. Okay, so from that point of view, I think we've pretty much covered everything of DeliverPoint. Yeah, you've got that, of course, in SharePoint. You've also got it inside of Teams as well, so you can use it there. And we've got some of the different OneDrive features that you can use through DeliverPoint as well, from either the Teams environment or the SharePoint environment. So just switching back to the slides, I just wanted to sort of highlight what is new in this. So for existing people or existing customers that are using DeliverPoint, these are the new things that we've released this month in May. And as you probably know, every 4 months we have a release of each of our products. So this month it is DeliverPoint month, and in 4 months' time it'll be DeliverPoint month again, where there'll be more features released. So the people, cards, and avatars, that is new. So in every single report, wherever you see somebody's name, you'll be able to hover over their avatar, and you'll be able to see who that person is, and see what they're about, who they report to, that type of thing. And that will help you try to determine whether they should have permissions or not to the given content. Also new, we had OneDrive permission reporting and OneDrive sharing link reporting. The removal tool is new, so you can now go through and remove those permissions. So that's a brand new feature this month. There's also the report progress information. So sometimes it was difficult to determine whether DeliverPoint had hung or whether it is just running a long report. Now we can actually see what it's doing. So how many items it's got to go through, how many sites and how many lists, etc. It's churning through in order to produce your report. So you may have seen that sort of showing up in some places. There was improved document library performance as well. So some people were seeing performance issues where libraries had exceeded threshold limits and so on. So that has been overcome. DeliverPoint is no longer just in English, it's now in German, Dutch, Spanish, and French as well. And if you're using SharePoint on premises still and use SharePoint 2019, one of the things with SharePoint 2019 is you've kind of got this mix at the moment of some classic lists and libraries and also some modern lists and libraries. And the SharePoint on premises version, specifically the SharePoint on premises version of DeliverPoint, the WSP, is basically working with the sort of classic interface of those lists and libraries with inside SharePoint 2019. So we've extended the modern features by using an SPFX package that you can install alongside the WSP to give you those SPFX extensions from within inside your library. So you can use it across the classic and the modern with inside of SharePoint 2019. And for those existing customers, because of the introduction of the new language packs, we needed to release this as a new package. So it's not going to be an auto update through the CDN. So if you want to take advantage of these features, you can go onto our website, lightningtools.com, and under the customer download section, you can go through and download the latest version and update that in your app catalog. Okay, so if you are new to DeliverPoint, if it's the first time you've seen it, you can download a trial of DeliverPoint. So there's a 30-day trial. You can arrange a private demo. So if there's some sort of specific scenarios that you want to go through or run by us, then you can absolutely arrange a private demonstration. It's all automated, to just pick a date that suits you, and that will create the calendar link and everything for you, so we can jump onto that demo. And you can also view the DeliverPoint roadmap as well to see what's coming in future months. And you can do all of that from ltools.co/DeliverPoint. So that will take you straight to the DeliverPoint page, and everything you need there will be available. Okay, and I see there's a couple of more questions, so I'll just address those in just a moment. So there are some upcoming webinars as well. So in June, there is a Social Squared webinar. So this is one of our other tools. It's the discussion board tool it's a discussion tool for SharePoint and also Teams. That's in June. We've got a Lightning Conductor release in July. There's going to be a brand new roll-up engine provider for that, for performing content aggregation from Microsoft 365 groups. So that will be available in July. And then we've also got Lightning Forms, a new release for that in August. And you can go to ltools.co/webinars to view previous webinars, and also get the registration links for the new webinars that are coming out as well. And of course, if you subscribe to our newsletter, which you can do on our website, you'll be notified of these as well. Okay, so questions. I see there's already a few coming up, so I'm just going to start picking through some of those. But if you have any additional questions, you can put those in the question panel, which you should see through Zoom, or if there's something that you think of later on, you can drop that to sales@lightningtools.com as well. If it's a technical question, they'll forward it to the right place, so you can get your answers. Okay, so yeah, there's a question: is this tool available for SharePoint 2016? So this DeliverPoint is available for SharePoint 2016. It's slightly different because it's deployed through a WSP, not the SharePoint framework that this one is. But yep, arguably everything that you've just seen is available for SharePoint 2016, and actually a little bit more as well, because there's some things that we can do for SharePoint 2016 through the full trust WSP model that you can't do yet in SPFX. So things like auditing permissions and permission alerts and things like that are some of the features that you can do there. And in fact, we have on our YouTube channel something called our Lightning Chat, where myself and Sandy have a weekly chat about the different things that are going on inside Lightning Tools. So you can always tune into that. And our last discussion, which got released on Tuesday this week, was exactly that. It's what's available in SharePoint on premises versus SharePoint Online as far as DeliverPoint is concerned. So yeah, there's a good sort of 20-minute discussion about the differences between those two builds. Yeah, another question is DeliverPoint automatically updated, or do we have to do that manually? So yeah, as an existing customer that's using the SPFX version of DeliverPoint, you will find that some of the things that we do are released by us updating the CDN, and we notify people of that through our newsletter as well. But occasionally, like this release, where we've introduced additional files, you do need to download the package again. So if you're on 3.2 at the moment and you want to get to 3.3, which is this release, you must download the package. And I'll just show you where you can go to do that. So you're not having to sort of fill out the download trial form. I mean, that's one way of doing it. But if we just go to lightningtools.com, you'll find there's a customer area here. Under the customer area, you'll find the download center. And if you just click here onto DeliverPoint for SharePoint Online, you'll be able to download the 3.3 version. And yeah, you'll be able to see what the previous version was as well, and so on, and when that was released. Okay, and whilst I'm on here as well, if you just go to lightningtools.com/roadmap, that's a good place for sort of keeping an eye on, what's coming in future releases as well. So so here we are in May. These are the things that we've gone through and released this month. So you can see those, and yeah, the things that are coming in subsequent months as well are all available there. Okay, so another question is, can DeliverPoint back up user permissions to assist in tenant-to-tenant migration? Unfortunately not. So it's not providing the sort of backup features at all. So this is more about managing and reporting on permissions within a specific tenant within the environment. Yeah, if you wanted to have a sort of tenant-to-tenant migration, a desktop type tool like ShareGate or something like that might be the best answer for you. Okay, so can you hide the top left branding Lightning Tool software? Lightning Tool software is actually, that's because I've got a hub, and that's the title of the site, nothing to do with DeliverPoint. Yeah, you'll see as I navigate to different sites that you don't see that. That's just literally the site name there. So if I go into the site information, so it's not coming from this one, it's coming from the hub site. So that's the title of the site there. So like I say, nothing to do with DeliverPoint. Oh, I changed the wrong one, but anyway, it's not. It's just simply the hub name for that hub. Okay, so has DeliverPoint updated to copy users within SharePoint groups when copying permissions between site collections? Yes, yeah, I'm not sure of a time where you couldn't do that. So if you wanted to copy permissions within SharePoint groups when copying permissions between site collections. Okay, so I think I understand the question. So if I was to go through and say I want to copy permissions from one user to the next, there are sorry, no, that's one user to the next. But if I go to, sorry, just bear with me. If I'm not understanding the question, we can follow up afterwards as well, if you like. So if I was to say I want to copy site permissions and the target site is in another site, I can copy those groups and also any missing permission levels. I'm not sure if that's the question or not, but I can follow up afterwards if that helps. Okay, so currently it copies the groups, not the users in them. All right, I'll test that. We'll follow up with you and make sure that you know, we can repeat that. Okay, another question. I saw that the activation process requires user to add a web app. Is there another way to activate, check the license status without having to set up a web part? Okay, so yeah, this is the first time. So you only have to, well, when you install DeliverPoint inside your environment, you get a 30-day trial built into the product, and when you get a license key, you just have to add that once to the web part, and then that is it, licensed for the tenant then. So there's usually not an issue with that, because since the tenant is online, if you're using on-prem and your on-prem SharePoint farm is not online, then we can do a manual activation, which doesn't require internet access. But yeah, again, if there's a specific requirement there, let us know. In fact, if you just want to drop me an email, or I'll reach out to you and just make sure that I fully understand that question, I'll be able to get back to you on that. But yeah, the activation process, just so we're clear, you can actually, it's a good thing to point out as well. So when you go through and add a page, you can actually add DeliverPoint to that page. And that means that, rather than sort of getting to DeliverPoint through the menu system, you can actually just have a page that you go to, and from that page you can manage permissions. And by clicking onto Edit Web Part, this is where the license key would go. So if you purchase a license key, you drop that license key in here, provide your name, organization, and who it's licensed to, and hit Activate, and that's it, done. You don't ever have to do that again. It's done for that that tenant at that point. Okay, so yeah, I think that's all the questions. Hopefully that's given you an accurate answer. I will reach out to anybody that I didn't answer fully. But like I say, if there is questions that you think of, then please feel free to reach out to us on sales@lightningtools.com. And like I say, if you're interested in what's in the on-prem build as well, of course, you can find that on our website. There's some videos on there, or also if you listen to the most recent Lightning Tools chat, you'll be able to hear that discussion as well. But yeah, at that point, since there's no more questions, I'm just going to say thank you very much for attending. I hope everybody got a lot out of this, and hopefully see you on a future webinar. Many thanks.